So you might be wondering, how can I do all of this? So one thing I wanted to do today was show the kids how to break down drums. Oftentimes I get so many questions about drums when we go out different places, and kids are very interested in the drums. So I wanted to take time throughout this course to break down the drums, each part of the drums, and kind of just give a very small synopsis of what each part does and the basic function of each part. So I pray that this helps. All right. All right. So today we will be discussing the toms. And as you can see, I have 4 toms, as I've spoken to you before. And just as a little review, we have talked about the kick drum, we've talked about the snare drum, and we've talked about the hi-hat. So just to give you a small overview, the kick drum is here with my right foot. The snare is here. We hit the snare. And the hi-hat is here. All right, so today we're going to discuss the toms. So as you can see, I have 4 toms. I have basically 2 rack toms and 2 floor toms, basically. So we're going to just kind of talk about a small function, because I would have to really kind of go in deep to kind of talk about every 6 or toms or whatever. So the top tom basically is your high tom, and it's kind of high sounding basically. So we're going to hit that just to get a overview of the sound. So as you can see, you hear how high is tuned. And again, I have to come back and do a session on actually tuning. So we have our second tom, tom 2. As you can see, it's a little bit lower and a deeper sound. And so we're going to go ahead and do our first floor tom, which will be our tom 3. So you kind of hear that it's a little bit deeper. And as you can guess, we have a 4th tom, and that's going to sound a little bit different as well. Let's go. So it kind of sounds like a bass drop, if you ever heard that in a lot of songs. So what I'm going to do, because it's kind of hard to kind of explain it in the basics, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a groove, and I'm going to kind of show you how to incorporate the toms, how I would actually use toms in a song or in a beat, because toms and cymbals are basically like accents. And what accents are basically your snare and your hi-hat and your kick drum is your basics. Like, you can take away everything else, but if you got your hi-hat, your kick drum, and your snare, you can basically play any groove or whatever. And just to kind of give you a better idea, your toms and your cymbals are basically like icing on a cake or whatever. So it's just something you can use to kind of just have fun with, but you have to do it in its right capacity. So let's just go through. I'm gonna do probably like 2 different grooves, and I'm gonna show you how you can use your toms. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start off with the top tom in the groove, then I'm gonna go all the way down to the other toms as well. So let's go. All right, so you can kind of get a little feel for what I meant about the toms. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna just kind of do another simple groove, and I'm gonna go across the toms a little bit more so you can kind of get a better understanding. But this groove is gonna be slow because I know it's for beginners. So just kind of pay attention to what I'm doing with the toms because this is gonna really take practice because it's not something that you can just get overnight. So what I want you to do is make sure that you got your kick drum, your snare, and your hi-hat down pat. Just don't even worry about the tones until you get that down pat because it'll mess you up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that groove now, and I hope that this helps. So yeah, you can kind of get an understanding now of what I was meaning about, your toms or whatever. So again, basically make sure that you have your foundation, which is your hi-hat, your snare, and your kick. I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure that's your foundation first. Of course, that sounds good with the toms or whatever, but just make sure that your foundation is strong because it'll make it better once you add your toms. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just kind of play around with the tones a little bit now just to kind of give you something to hope for or whatever. And then I'm going to come back, I'm going to slow it down and do that same groove again that I did earlier so that you can kind of see in a slower capacity how you can incorporate your toms. All right. So now you kind of get an understanding of what I'm talking about with the toms. And again, I hope that this helped. Like I say, your snare, your kick, and your bass drum are your essentials, and your toms and cymbals are kind of just accent stuff that you can use to just enhance what you're already doing. So, like I say, get the basics right, and I hope that this kind of enlighten you if you did get the basics to kind of practice and just kind of venture out a little bit in your toms. So what we're going to do on the next episode is we're going to focus on adding cymbals. And cymbals are fun. It's a little bit easier than the toms because, it's you'll see what I'm talking about. So I hope that you have a great one. And until then, we'll see you. Bye.